National correspondent Deborah Farrick is also working her sources for us. We know federal authorities, law enforcement authorities are involved, state, local. What are you finding out, Deb?
Well, we're learning a little bit more about the conversation that the alleged shooter, the alleged gunman, was having online last night with a group of people. And it's a disturbing conversation that he was having. He talks about his plans for committing some sort of an act. Some people are giving him guidance, how to do it, how the type of weapon to use. There are some that just seem to be encouraging him, others saying, don't do it. One person actually puts up an address for an FBI tips hotline, but the nature of the conversation that this alleged shooter is having is both at times he's characterized as both a pathetic loser, but also as almost a twisted hero. There is a reference, Wolf, to the UC Santa Barbara shooter, another very disturbed individual who wrote a very long manifesto about how no one was treating him right. So investigators are looking very, very closely at this thread, at this conversation. They do believe they've identified him. He was shot and killed on that campus during this active shooting event. He was shot, he was killed, they know who he is, and so we're looking now to formally and officially identify him through law enforcement, Wolf.
Presumably they've already identified those with whom he was communicating on this social media site, right?
Well, they certainly are reaching out to those individuals. They're trying to assess how well these people knew him, how long he had been talking about doing this, why he did this, what his motive was. You know, we know the UC Santa Barbara shooter, he did it because he felt he was being rejected by women on campus. And so he decided to get back at them and get back at these sort of beta males who would, you know, sort of stand in his way. We don't know whether that's the same motive as this individual right now, but he was clearly very disturbed. And he was clearly looking to do something that would get him attention. And as I said, some people on that website, they were encouraging him to do it. Others were saying, don't. So all of that right now under investigation.
Well, those who were encouraging him to do it have some explaining to do, and presumably they'll be doing that explaining to law enforcement. Stand by, Deb. I know you're working your sources. I want to bring in our law enforcement analyst, the former FBI Assistant Director Tom Fuentes, the former Assistant Director of the U.S. Marshal's Office, Arthur Roderick. Guys, thanks very much for joining us. Pamela Brown is still with us, our justice correspondent as well. Tom Fuentes, you just heard that latest indication that online this shooter was apparently discussing what he planned on doing the next day. You would think somebody who saw those kinds of social media postings would go to law enforcement and report what's going on.
You would think so, Wolf, but you know what we're going to want to hear from these people is whether they just took it seriously or not. Maybe they just thought that he was just ranting and raving and yeah, go ahead. And you know, like sometimes people say, I'm going to jump off the building, and they say, yeah, go ahead. So we don't know how seriously it seemed to them that he was actually going to go do it.
What do you think, Arthur?
I mean, I think unfortunately in this day and age, you know, somebody's got to report these types of communications. It seems like we're talking about this in hindsight, and if this individual was chatting the way he was chatting on this website, then obviously somebody's got to say something. You know, somebody put up an FBI tip line. If that's confirmed, then somebody should have come forward to law enforcement and said, hey, this individual is talking, you know, that he's going to shoot somebody up here.
We got a problem. Stand by. Everybody stand by. We're getting new information. We'll take a quick break. Much more on the developing story, the shocking story out of Portland, near Portland, Oregon, just south of Portland, Oregon. We'll be right back. There's been yet another mass shooting, a mass killing at a college campus here in the United States. 10 people killed, more than 20 others injured at Oregon's Umpqua Community College. That's very close to Roseburg in Oregon. Pamela Brown, our justice correspondent, is getting new information. The shooter is dead, a 20-year-old individual who apparently the night before, hours before, posting certain indications that he was planning on going somewhere at least and starting to kill people?
That's right. And Wolf, I've been looking at these websites, the message board that he was apparently posting on. But I want to make it clear, law enforcement is still trying to validate these sites and make sure it was actually the man they believe to be the gunman. But these are very disturbing communications about what he intended to do. It gave an ominous warning. If I were you, if you are in this area, I wouldn't go to school. And also it appears, just from looking at these communications, and if it is indeed him, it appears he identified himself as a beta male, which is essentially the opposite of alpha male. So these these are individuals like the Elliot Rogers in Santa Barbara who opened fire, you may remember, and had that disturbing YouTube video. These are individuals who feel like sort of the world is against them, that they can't get women, they have a hard time, and they're not as social perhaps. And so there are these websites that law enforcement are looking at about being, beta males, that this gunman, they believe, interacted on these sites and had some, involvement with them.
Tom Fuentes, so you have something
If I
on
could
this?
add to that, one of the things that's most disturbing to law enforcement in the last few years is that years ago, before the internet, before these websites, and these type of people couldn't find each other to communicate. They were so antisocial, they'd be holed up in their home, they wouldn't have friends, they wouldn't communicate. Now with the internet, they can get in touch with each other and encourage each other to do bad things and be like a social extended club, where their very nature is to be against being in a club like that. So the fact that they identify as beta males, that they identify as being part of that group, where in the past they wouldn't have been a part of any group. They'd have just been home alone.
And to his point, we did see some of that in this message board, some encouraging him, others saying you shouldn't do this. And so it's really disturbing. There's this whole dark world on the web where people who may not be in a club or fit in find that community online.
Well, let me get some reaction to this from Paul Morgan. He's an astronomy professor at the Umpqua Community College. He's still on the phone with us. You actually heard gunshots before you got out of the scene over there. Professor, what do you make of the discussion that was going on apparently on these websites?
Oh, I'm just shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. This whole thing is just, I just don't know what to say. I'm just completely stunned.
You've been a professor there for, 20 years? Has there been any indication that there are sort of these sordid underground individuals who are angry, frustrated, and they go online, they go to these chats, and they talk about doing something dastardly like this?
No, I'm not aware of anything like that. We have had a very tranquil campus. It's been a very good atmosphere. I think the faculty and the students interact well. That's why I'm just absolutely stunned. I could not believe this would happen at Umpqua.
Tell us about the average student. You've been there, as I say, for 20 years. What are the kids like who study there? And some are not necessarily that young either, right?
We have a variety of students, from those that are right out of high school to those that are sort of trying to find a second career. I mean, I've taught students that are 20. I've taught students that are 60. We just have a wide variety of people. That's part of the fun of being at a community college. We have a great array of students.
Has there been any history of unrest, violence, extremism, anger, anything like that on the campus?
Nothing like that. That's why this is so shocking. I mean, it just took us all by surprise.
It is shocking indeed. Paul Morgan, stand by. Art Roderick is still with us as well, former assistant director of the U.S. Marshal's Office. There's no way law enforcement, whether local, state, federal, can monitor all of their tens of thousands, if not more, of these websites.
There is absolutely no way. You can go all the way back to Columbine, look at the UC Santa Barbara shooter, look at Newtown, look at the Colorado Theater shooter, and they all fit into the same category: young, white, disenfranchised males. So Tom's point was right on, that they're able to find each other on the internet now, and they kind of rile each other up and dare each other to do these types of incidences. So it is very difficult. Somebody that's in these chat rooms has actually got to report this information.
You would think at Virginia Tech, you were there at Virginia Tech, Tom Fuentes, there's a history, unfortunately, here in the United States of mass shootings on college campuses and schools.
Well, not just college. I mean, every kind of campus. We have Sandy Hook Elementary School. The disenfranchised person, like Art's talking about, that's a loser, that has mental problems, and then gets guns, is able to arm themselves and then go into, whether it's a grade school, a high school, a college, a theater. There's no way we can lock down the entire society to prevent it when we have these kind of people on the loose and now encouraging each other, which is something we didn't have before the internet and before these dark sites.
And we just heard that maybe 4 guns were found at the scene before this individual was shot and killed by law enforcement. All right, we'll take another quick break. We're following what's happening in Oregon. Much more of our coverage right after this.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.